That presents a lot of challenges for companies to see this patchwork of regulations develop among the states at the same time that EPA is advancing potential federal requirements. Sometimes Congress will intercede and develop a new set of ground rules for regulating a substance. And as I understand it, there's quite a few pieces of legislation that are being considered right now. What can you tell us about what Congress is looking at?
You're absolutely right, Chuck. I've written about this in the Nickel report. The patchwork of regulations that states are creating is causing confusion both for the regulated industry and for the public. Congress, both the House and Senate, have been quite active in introducing PFAS legislation. Some of the legislation has bipartisan support. Some of the bills are requiring EPA to establish MCLs under the Safe Water Drinking Act for all PFAS chemicals. They're requiring EPA to list all PFAS chemicals as CERCLA hazardous substances. They're requiring EPA to amend TSCA Section 6 to comprehensively regulate PFAS, and even to list PFAS as a hazardous air pollutant under the Clean Air Act.
So Congress is really having to grapple with the tension of responding to a concern that is emerged, but in the face of uncertain information. And they need to balance, as they have in several other environmental statutes over the years, the grounding future regulation in sound science, but also addressing precautionary principles in dealing with uncertainties. Your companies that you give advice to, they see what the states are doing, they see litigation emerging, they see what Congress is looking at. What 3 or 4 things are you advising your clients right now in the PFAS space?
Definitely. One is to establish a comprehensive PFAS strategy that looks at both current and past uses of PFAS. Looking for replacements, not only the short chain or smaller carbon chain PFAS, but also potentially fluorine-free chemicals. The second one would be to conduct targeted advocacy at both the federal and state levels. Third, monitor legislation and litigation. And fourth, to develop best practices. And these would be around air permitting, water permitting, waste management, containing wastewater that has PFAS in it, as well as treatment of that wastewater, environmental sampling, purchasing, and even looking at supply contracts for PFAS.
That's an awful lot of work. And that work is being done against a backdrop of an emerging trend in litigation, toxic tort litigation. Initially against the manufacturers, but now expanding to users. Give us a snapshot on that litigation and what's happening on that front.
Well, Chuck, we've seen a spike in PFAS litigation around the country in the past year. We've seen suits brought by state attorney generals, citizen groups, against, like you mentioned, not only the manufacturers, but users of PFAS, even consumer products. There haven't been, well, they're alleging personal injury as well as water contamination and economic loss. There have only been a few results, but some of the settlements we've seen have been in the hundreds of millions of dollars.
So companies, it's an ever-changing legal landscape that seems to be emerging, state, Congress, EPA, and then in the courts. And often litigation results will feed back to the development of regulation, and vice versa. So staying abreast of it all as it unfolds will be critically important to companies.
Definitely. Companies should monitor both litigation and legislation, particularly those litigation developments and outcomes that could affect regulation outcomes. Companies should even consider preparing amicus briefs and litigation that would have a significant impact on their company.